Oh, what the fuck's happening, everybody? Thanks for tuning into the Crash Bang Boom Drumming Podcast. Today's guest is part of the ongoing Brooklyn Underground series, and that guest would be Jon Lane of Brooklyn's own proggy-stoner-doomy power trio, Godmaker. Godmaker can also be found backing up fellow Aqualam artists Nathaniel, Shannon, and the Vanishing twin, by the way. Anywho, I caught up with Jon just post-release of their split record with local killer Somnuri, vinyl available from the company KC, whose links can be found in the description, and prior to a string of shows featuring both bands to celebrate said release. And there was no shortage of Portishead nerdery, marching band geekery, Metallica dorkery, and general drum and tomfoolery. Maybe even a little general buffoonery. Oh my God! The Crash Bang Boom Podcast is available on iTunes Podcast, SoundCloud, Stitcher, my YouTube channel, and of course all the obligatory horseshit social media, Facebox, Flinstagram, and even Twitter. Feel free to give me a subscription and or a positive rating, you cheap bastages. If you're looking at putting out vinyl for your project, check out NewOrleansRecordPress.com. They're the first state-of-the-art record pressing facility in New Orleans. They'll press 12 and 7-inch records in both standard weight, 150 gram, and heavyweight, 180 gram variants. They'll even offer professional graphic design and project consulting services if you need them. Don't see what you want on their site? Need more options? Contact them for special projects. They also do projects of all sizes, from runs as low as 100 units up to commercial pressings into the thousands. So check it out and tell them Crash Bang Boom sent you, all right? And that's NewOrleansRecordPress.com. So here we go. So what's the scenario? Jon Lane, Godmaker. Crash Bang Boom.
Crowds go mad with joy.
Jon Lane of Godmaker. What's happening, buddy?
Not much. How are you doing?
Pretty good. It's all rainy outside. It's kind of cold and shitty, but we have to sound like we're excited to do this, Jon.
I'm on no sleep and a lot of caffeine, so I'll do my very best.
Do your best, buddy. Well, congrats on the new split with local band Somnuri. I'm a fan of both of those bands, obviously, for those of you who are interested. Phil Sangio Comeover was episode 58 of the Crash Bang Boom Drumming Podcast, so feel free to check that out as well. But congrats on the split, man. It sounds super cool. I know you've got a gig coming up.
We do.
What's been going on with you, man? How you doing?
Lots have been going on with me. Sort of been enjoying my return to working in the music industry and trying to balance that with running this band, so to speak, and being married, which wasn't in the original master plan and came back up and has been awesome. So I'm trying to run 3 full-time gigs at the same time, basically.
It's the juxtaposition of doing adult shit and still trying to have fun and doing teenage, angst-ridden, fun time, dream time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, tell me a little bit about this split, man. How did this come to be? Why the two of you on a split? What happened with this? What's the story with this?
It's a long and winding story, actually. The main reason for it becoming what it is that our first record's been out for kind of a long time. It came out
2014, right?
End of 14, and the vinyl came out beginning of 16.
Yeah.
And, this whole time we're working on the second record, but we've had a couple member changes. We've had the same 3 core guys in Godmaker since 2011, basically.
You, Andrew, and Pete.
Yeah, exactly. And my friend Chris moved out here from Kansas to join the band, and he's on the first record and was in the band for a year or two after that. And after he had got a cool gig and sort of moved on up the coast, we started jamming with Carmine Layetta,
formerly of Hull.
Number 5.
He's the 5th?
He's the 5th.
Good God.
Yeah.
Wow, popular name in the family.
Right. Have you met Number 6? He's the cutest one.
Oh my God! Did he name his son after?
Oh yeah.
That's number 6.
Yeah, Carmi.
Holy shit, 6 of them.
But yeah, and Carmine was like just absolutely the guy we wanted once we realized we needed to put someone else on the second guitar.
For sure.
Then conveniently also had pipes, and
right.
we became a lilting harmony band all of a sudden.
Yeah, man.
Which was awesome. But we basically was sort of a jump between records. We had this song that we had been working on that we knew was going to be stupid long. It's 13:44, I think, on the record.
Damn, dude, almost 14 minutes. That's excessive, John.
We're kind of assholes, and it's mostly my fault probably. But yeah, we knew we wanted to kick that out on its own, just kind of for one thing, because we felt like it was a big jump forward in songwriting. The songs on the record, were the first 4 songs we wrote.
Right.
And we're not leaving that sound behind at all, but we're definitely, we had always planned to get weirder and broader and quieter and louder and weirder and more layered and who knows what else as we went. We've been promising it was going to get weirder the whole time.
Well, doing a Portishead cover also helps for both the dynamics and for potentially getting a little bit weirder, I feel like.
Yeah, that was sort of a happy accident when it started. But that was never, we had never intended for that to be on the split. Like, we tracked it when we went in to do it just because it was the other thing that just seemed logical.
Right.
That we knew wasn't going to be part of a record, but it would be cool to have tracked. We'd been playing it off and on for a couple years, and we'd whip it out of our back pocket and have people look at us really funny a few times.
By the way, have you seen, I think we've had this discussion. For those of you listening to this, John and I have had a few discussions at particular times of the night in loud rock and roll bars that maybe neither of us, or particularly myself, remember to the fullest degree. But you've seen Portishead live, right?
I have.
Did you see him in New York the last time they came through?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm assuming I told you this then, so pardon the redundancy, but I recall that as being one of the loudest fucking shows that I had been to, and it's like in my memory, it's one of the loudest shows I feel like I've been to. Yeah. That band of all bands, it was so loud. But that being said, it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was totally badass.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a life changer.
But am I crazy, or was it loud?
I mean, I'm not I might be numb to it. I sit in front of Andrew Archie's bass rig a lot, and like my body doesn't really feel sound anymore, I don't think.
Okay.
But no, it was loud as hell.
Okay.
I'm a really religious earplug wearer. So like
I am too.
They're all loud, but yeah, it was. I particularly remember the end of Glory Box when the sample drops in.
Yes.
The entire place just felt like it was going to come loose. Like
Absolutely.
It was insane. And now every time I listen to that song, I want it to happen, and I'm disappointed that it doesn't. But
man, what a crazy band that is. That's the only time that I've seen them. And when they came through, I was like, this is one of those shows you have to go to.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And Clive is probably one of my top 3. I don't really think about ranking drummers, but he's way at the top of my list.
He's up there like that.
If I had to pick a best drumming performance, like I don't know that I could put anything above their live, the Roseland DVD that they put out.
Oh,
it's
that
so
shit
good.
is amazing.
It's religion to me.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Beautifully shot. Oh, the vibe is there. It sounds great.
Yeah.
And it is trippy. I mean, I feel like there has to be some post effects or sort of reverse engineering of what he's playing, because he's not like playing a lot of electronics or a lot of samples. He's playing the kit, but I think they're affecting it.
Well, that's the beauty of what they do is they're super anal retentive and obsessive about recreating the sounds on the record.
Right.
And like, I don't know I assume if you've looked into it, like the way they recorded those records is all those drum loops and such are samples of Clive playing those things on his drum set.
Right.
Like on his acoustic kit. And I'm sure, and they needle him around for sure.
Of course.
But, he, on that tour, it's the same ride cymbal that he played on those sample recordings in 1992 or whenever the hell Dummy came out.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it actually gave me a little bit of a complex when we started playing it, especially when we realized we were going to record it.
Because the sound of it is so much of the vibe and so much of what's going on
and
with
again,
that music.
How do you
recreate that?
How do you mess with perfection, And and especially when it's one of your like fanboy favorite drummers,
of course,
and when they're so anal about reproducing every sound and every beat and every nuance, I kind of had trouble making it my own for a while. But
I hear you.
The cool thing about it was, I don't know if you've ever heard, he has a band called Get the Blessing.
No.
It's the rhythm section of Portishead and the horns from Super Furry Animals, the trumpet and sax.
Oh, cool.
Who also have played with Portishead. But
okay.
It's like Ornette Coleman, weird,
Okay.
bouncy, catchy, abstract, jazzy, annoying, wonderful shit.
All right.
And I got to see what might have actually been their first U.S. show. It was at Joe's Pub in like 2011 or something.
Wow, really?
And there were probably 20 people there. It was fun to watch because, again, when you see him in this like super, disciplined or regulated gig of Portishead, now he's doing the same thing in Radiohead too.
I know. Well, how crazy is that?
And then you see this one where he's like cutting loose, and you can watch them just obviously screwing with each other on stage and like throwing in things. And I got to talk to him for a little bit after the show, and I was kind of just saying how nice it was. Like, and if you know this, he was Robert Plant's drummer like all the way through the 90s.
Right.
And
I forgot about that.
Yeah, he was like kind of English electronic Josh Freese for a while. I mean, he's on so many records that no one knows he's on. But I talked to him, but I was like, it's kind of nice to see you shift between mechanical Portishead, drum and bassy, then just suddenly kick into like Bonham's swing. And he's like, did you pick up on that? He's like, I'm glad you saw that. And it's funny because like that's sort of what evolved into our cover. I started putting little stupid Bonham kick drum triplets and things into the song, and it kind of naturally just came out.
Yeah.
That's actually probably my favorite drum track I've ever recorded.
Really?
And it's loose and weird and floppy, and Godmaker has always been kind of somewhere between swingy and swaggery, whatever. It's
right.
I have a sort of dirty interpretation of time, and
yeah,
thankfully I found some guys who can follow it real well.
Right. Like, well, it's certainly not overly mechanized or quantized or pitch shifted and triggered and everything else. So
0 clicks, 0 triggers.
Right.
Not that I'm opposed to it, but thus far.
Yeah. Well, there's some elasticity in what y'all do that I think would put that on a grid would kind of kill a little bit of it. I feel like.
Yeah.
So I think you're making the right choice in doing that. I think it sounds cool for that. Yeah. It's not like I sit there and think, oh God, I can hear.
He's picked up 2 clicks.
Shift it. Yeah. I mean, your parts change BPMs. That's just so. Then what are you going to tempo map all of that? Yeah. Like that's just a pain in the balls. You don't want to do that.
Yeah. It was sort of a question of circumstances on the first record, just because, I mean, if you look at Megalith, it's 8 minutes of just weird turns and odd time and stupid transitions that I don't even think we know how to meter.
Right.
And it would have taken us a year. And that record was basically recorded like a demo. The first 4 songs that were actually on the record before we did vinyl were total. Our entire circumstance flopped on us. We had cancellation after cancellation from the recording end of it, not from our end. And we switched over our dude Justin Mantooth, who I think everybody we know at this point has worked with at some level.
I did the family record with him.
Yeah. And he was about to move back to Kansas City to take over the Shiner studio.
Whoa, that's something we need to talk about.
Yeah. And it's not called that. Sorry.
No.
It's just what it is to me. It's like
right.
It's Malinowski's, but but he was about to move back, and we were running out of time. And he's like, "Hey, I booked this place in Bushwick. We have it Saturday and I think Sunday, and we threw it all in the delivery van for the kombucha company that Chris and I were working for at the time.
Right.
Kind of ran, and drove it over there. And I mean, I just remember it was like 33 minutes of music or something. And I mean, we did all the drum tracks in the space of a couple hours.
Right.
And I'm sure there were a couple of punches and such, but no clicks. So for the most part, those are like first and second takes. And there are things that make me twitch violently every time I hear one or two of them. There's an errant ride cymbal bell somewhere in Megalith that in the middle of a drum fill that has never been there any other time I've played it, but that one take.
That's hilarious.
I tried to get him to take it out, and it just it was in all the mics, and we couldn't.
Oh, nice! I gotta listen. I gotta look for this now.
It will haunt me every time because it's super exposed, and it's never happened any other time. But
you know what I'm realizing in the studio that you're talking about in Bushwick, I believe that's where I recorded the drums for the family record as well. So we recorded drums in the same room.
In the same living room, basically?
Yeah, it was the living room.
Yeah. With that SSL board in the basement, yeah.
That's right.
And
Oh, okay, wow.
It came out super nice.
Yeah.
But the circumstances were wonky. Where we recorded the guitars was wired hot, so we were getting all sorts of radio interference in the guitar amps while we were tracking. And so... which turned out cool. There's a couple places on the record where I had him keep it, and I was like, don't delete that.
Right.
I know what we're going to do with that.
Yeah.
And so in shallow points and at the very end of the record, you can hear it winding in and out. And that's not some overt sample we tracked down. It's just, it was literally the AM radio coming through when we recorded it.
Oh,
we
that's
just
super
mixed
cool.
it back in and out a couple places where it made sense. But
Right. Where did y'all track this, the split? Where did y'all
the split, we recorded at Spaceman Sound.
Okay.
With
where
Tom.
I've also recorded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Tom Tierney. And
Yeah.
holy God, did he get a wonderful drum sound.
It's a great room.
I mean, I said this about Justin's too. They were both the most my drums have ever sounded like my drums.
Uh-huh.
And I think I've just learned how to tune them maybe a little bit better over the 2 years in between. But
Yeah, it'll happen.
But yeah, we recorded with him, and he did everything with Excerpt. And then the Portishead track, because we sort of knew that when we would recorded the vocals for that, Pete was sick.
Uh-huh.
And Pete's got pipes that I love. And
Right.
that dude is a super vocalist.
Yeah, it's awesome that you
And-
can pull that off.
But you could tell it was like 80% Pete. And I was just like, dude, come on.
He still sounds. Oh, I mean, but did he go back and redo it?
And so we went back.
Okay, I was going to say what's on the record.
we
Sounds
had
good.
we had Bob from Relapse. He put out the Cat comp.
Right.
It was,
We're on that too.
Yeah, right.
Beast
yeah,
Modules
you
is on
guys
it.
jumped in when we couldn't play the show.
That's right.
And then because that was coming up, we were sort of pressured to go back in and fix it. We couldn't get into Spaceman because Tom's super busy, as he should be.
Right.
And luckily, our buddy Mike Mayer from Dialect jumped in. So we went over to Jersey and redid some guitars, added a couple guitar tracks, and Pete redid the whole vocal track. And so it was cool to have Mike's hands on it too. Like those guys are super talented, and Mike and Pete go way, way, way back.
It's funny to rewind for a second. You mentioned a gig that my band played in replacing your band on a bill. That cancellation was one of the more ironic cancellations of a gig ever. So, do you want me to tell the story, or do you want to tell the story?
Well, I can tell the story. Our singer Pete, giant, cuddly, bearded beast that he is
Cat guy.
definite cat guy. He's got the entirety of this band. I would say 90% of the shows we play, he's wearing some sort of ridiculous kitten
He
shirt
has a
on
cat,
stage.
Yeah, cat shirt with lasers coming out of their eyes.
That's a good one.
That's a good one.
There's
Yeah.
keyboard cats in space.
Keyboard cats in space.
All sorts of good ones.
Yeah.
I think there's a cat kraken one. I might be making that up.
Okay. No shortage of cat motifs.
But it's always just been a thing.
Yeah.
We would just always kind of giggle at it and look for ridiculous ones for him to wear and on
Right.
tour and stuff if we're at Walmart or something in the middle
Yeah.
of the night. This compilation was for City Critters.
cat adoption, etc. A fundraiser for
Yeah.
cat adoption.
But yeah, and then both of Pete's cats are kind of getting on in years. And
Yeah.
anyway, she got sick. And it sort of became dire all of a sudden. And we knew going into the week of the show that he was probably going to have her put to sleep the
Right.
day after the show.
Yeah.
And then it sort of took a turn, and it turned the only time that he could get the vet to take care of it was literally at load-in time for the show,
Right.
for the cat comp.
Jesus Christ.
And he was determined to play the show because he didn't want to bail. And I was like, dude, Pete,
Yeah.
like, if there's ever been
Yeah.
a circumstance where a crowd would be more understanding of exactly the situation you're in,
Yeah.
like, it couldn't possibly be more appropriate than tonight.
Well, no shortage of irony. That obviously a sad story, but Jesus, the irony of that. I mean, look, but if you're looking at one side of it, no matter what you do in your career in rock and roll, one thing that you can positively say is that you're one of maybe the only rock and roll band in the history that it was played a cat fundraiser and had to cancel because one of the members' cats died. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm sure Pete's listening and rolling his eyes a lot right now.
Sorry, Pete. So I know you're a Kansas guy. So Kansas City, Kansas. or Kansas City, Missouri? Or
Actually, Lawrence, Kansas.
Lawrence, Kansas.
So,
okay.
down the road.
My Kansas geography is off. I don't know.
There's not a lot of reasons to study Kansas geography.
Yeah.
If you're not like a Civil War nerd or...
I've driven through parts of it, and it was hilly in like that particular area, but not much else happening.
The first third's really pretty, like rolling prairie, and then there's just nothing.
Right.
And then you see a tree, and you get excited after a couple hours.
Yeah. So that's where you grew up, and like out kind of that way? Or?
No, I'm. It's right by the eastern end, so close to Missouri. So it's 30 miles from Kansas City.
Okay.
It's college town, which is fortunate because that's why it had an awesome music scene. And when I grew up, my local bands were like Coalesce, and
really,
in the 90s, it was a big in indie rock, obviously, with like Get Up Kids and The Anniversary and Appleseed Cast and all those guys, which was a little bit less my scene. And my embarrassing admission is I actually kind of slept on Shiner, who were
same here,
Kansas City. And
that's wild. But were you able to see them?
Not until they got back together.
That's amazing.
I had discovered them backwards through the life and times. Like I used to play in a band with Chris from Godmaker called The Last Tyrant, and we were very like chaotic, techie, convergy, violent, hardcore. And our other guitar player was into much weirder and more diverse stuff. He was way into Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum, which all the dudes in my band now are way into, which is awesome. And he introduced me to The Life and Times also, which I went and saw them once and was immediately like, oh my God.
Yeah.
That might be one of the best rock drummers on the planet.
He's so
and
badass.
That band in general is just so good. Like, they make me want to keep our band as a trio, and in general, that's never been the plan. But every time I see them, I'm just like, God, maybe we shouldn't, just because no one's ever going to do it as well as them anyway at this point.
So good. But also, if for those of you listening to this that want to hear the interview that I did with Chris Metcalf of Life and Times, feel free to check that out. It's a good interview, fun guy to talk to. I need to talk to some of the Shiner drummers at some point, man.
Oh God, that whole family is just gross. Like,
Jason Gerken or Tim Dowd. Tim Dowd was the one. Is he on Luna Divina or whatever it is?
I always get it wrong.
I think he's on Luna Divina, and I think Jason Gerken started it with the Egg and Starless. I'm a fan of those guys. I don't know what's going on in the water with those dudes. Like the all three of those guys that are playing with Alan Epley. It's like, what is going on here?
That guy has done okay with drummers.
Yes, he has.
Well, with everybody.
Yeah.
God.
True.
There's never been a bad musician in either of those bands that I know of.
Right.
But
yeah, it's interesting. It wasn't until New York. I came to New York, and one of my buddies was digging up some CDs, and I was just talking about bands I was into. He was like, "Well, he's like, yeah, like Shiner," and I was like, "Shiner? I don't even know that I'd even heard of them." And he played them for me, and I was like, "How the fuck haven't I known about this band?" It was everything that I dug about bands.
Yeah.
I was shocked that I somehow missed them.
Yeah. Also, the opposite of that happens where you grow up spoiled, and like, you're sitting at home going, "Oh, Coalesce again?" Oh, meanwhile, people in Japan are like losing their shit to get them over there.
Of course.
I mean, that's another one. It's like when you grow up and they're just the local bands, you don't think that much about it, how revolutionary they might be,
right?
In the grand scheme.
You mentioned obviously just some of your early bands playing and whatnot. At that point, you're on a drum set, but where did it start for you playing drums?
Oddly, my grandmother was a minister.
Oh, really?
And lived in Santa Fe. And
my mother lived there for many years. It's a strange place.
Wonderful and strange, yeah.
Yeah.
And had at some point observed me playing on a toy drum and just decided unilaterally that I needed to be a drummer.
Okay.
And sent like somebody, I think just within her congregation or whatever, got a snare drum and like a hi-hat stand, and I think that was it. And those showed up one Christmas.
Whoa.
And then the next year, the like stereotypical blue sparkle Japanese knockoff drum kit that every kid in the 80s started with showed up, and my parents were thrilled.
I bet.
But in any case, I was sort of an ADD fat kid and discouraged, and I would sit down and play a horrible attempt at a drum solo on it and be like, I suck. And then I wouldn't touch them again for months, and they'd get dusty, and my brother's friends would play them when they came over. But I was fortunate enough to have an older brother who really didn't stick with music, but he was in it long enough that his friends introduced him to, metal. He brought home And Justice for All right when it had come out. And by the end
was that 89?
I think, it was August 88 is when it came out. But, but it was somewhere in that range. Like one had just come out as a video. It was all like...
Definitely remember that.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And by the end of Blackened, the first listen, I knew that they were my favorite band.
Yeah.
And that I had to be a musician and that I had to be a drummer.
That was the turning point. Everything.
At that point, I was 9 or 10. Started lessons, never quit. Picked it up pretty quickly, which was awesome. And I did school band, concert band and such through junior high, kind of just to like get my chops up. And I liked sight reading. I was good at it and it was fun, but I was definitely more of a drummer than a percussionist.
Right.
And then when I got to high school, I had to do marching band to stay in concert band, and I thought that was stupid. And then I was fortunate enough that I made snare line my first year.
Oh, awesome.
And ended up just having the time of my life.
Really?
And we had just gotten a proper drumline instructor for the first time ever at my school. And we were a big football school, so we had a 300-piece band almost. And we were good for a state that doesn't encourage competitive music.
Right.
We were good for that part of the world. We weren't like crazy super talented like some of them in Texas and the
right.
But our instructor had marched at Santa Clara Vanguard in DCI.
Oh wow.
Arguably playing the best show ever in 1988. Not that this is important to anyone who's listening who isn't already a drum corps nerd.
Yeah.
But he introduced me to that world and I fell in love with the Madison Scouts and spent 10 years doing different marching stuff. I think it took me 5 auditions to finally get into Madison. Wow. And it was insane. It was back then, I mean, not that I consider myself God's gift to drumming or anything, but like, I remember being there with 200 drummers trying out for 8 spots maybe, and maybe dude. 1 or 2 or 3 of them were on the instrument you actually wanted. Wow. And, because everybody came back. There was a super positive group. They were the crowd favorites generally. I would say totally, but I'm trying to not sound biased.
Yeah.
That we're going out there and not playing for the judges and just playing just balls out loud at all times and with the right amount of ego where you're not shitty.
Yeah.
You're not dicks, but they were definitely like, we know we're pretty good at this and we're pretty sure you're going to enjoy this, so let's have fun with this. And, I had offers from a corps that actually I would have won 2 championship rings. The 2 years I got to march with Madison, pretty much they were going to hand me a bass drum, which was I ended up on bass drum. Long story short, I did snare in high school. We were a matched grip school, so when I went to college, I switched to tenors.
Right.
Which was fun. Screwed up parts of my body, but it was fun.
I hated marching, to be honest with you.
Well, I thought I was gonna.
Yeah.
And then once I realized what bass drum line was like at a high level, where you're doing like the left-hand splits of 30-second notes with a guy in front of you doing the right hands while you're running backwards. And
right, that's just wild.
Crazy. It's the hardest thing to do and the most fun. And so I fell in love with that and they actually ended up taking me, or I was unofficially an alternate on bass drum and they threw me a pit spot. So I ended up in the front line doing all the parked percussion and chinas and gongs and baseball swinging at bass drums the size of a car. And
that's wild,
It was wonderful.
I had a totally different experience, man, because in Louisiana it is encouraged and it could be pretty competitive. And just having things like Mardi Gras and events like that, like all the schools have music programs and everybody's playing snare and drums and tenors and
I can't imagine.
quads and everything. So it's a crazy drumming culture down there. But in that world, once I had my own drum set, and maybe it's just because I'm kind of a lone wolf only child and I don't like having to play team sports, even though I played football. I was just like, it's so much more artistically fulfilling to just be able to go home and play whatever the fuck I want to play and not have to deal with band geeks or any of this other bullshit. And just that kind of open form of whatever I wanted to do was so much more enticing than having to deal with that. So I kind of fell off from it.
Oh, yeah. No, that whole time I still wanted to be a drum set drummer. That was always I never thought I was going to, be marching when I was 32 or anything.
Right.
But I just, in that world, it was sort of the equivalent of being like given the drum spot in Metallica. You're playing at the peak level, and 22,000 people are standing up and screaming real loud because you made them happy. Yeah. And once that hits you, you are just hooked, and you can't not perform in front of people. And still, if I go a couple months without playing a show, I think I become an irritable kind of jerk. Like I just like running around scratching itches. It's just I need it. I need the catharsis of it.
Absolutely.
Which is why we play, I think, the music we play.
Of course.
It was definitely one of the things when I was sort of dreaming up what Godmaker was going to become. I made some quote about how I wanted the band to make me as a gear nerd who's always been broke and had to work real hard for nice gear to just break all the shit on my drum kit and smile my ass off when I'm doing it. Like I wanted, that's what I wanted. And
That's your mission statement?
It's not the entirety of it, but it was vital. It was vital.
Right, a crucial part of it.
And it's, holy shit, have we hit that for me. Like it's been wonderful. Like I'm in my favorite band, and that's a rare thing to get to say.
That's awesome. I mean, I bust your balls every time I've ever seen you break out all the drums that you play on this.
That was an accident. I never intended to have that big a drum kit in this band. Like, we talked about it. When we started the band, we knew it was going to get weird. We didn't know if it was going to be like Gavin Harrison, Porcupine, like refined and nerdy weird. We just knew that there was going to be some weirdness to it. And
some prog nerdery, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, like, we were also listening to a ton of Clutch. And Mastodon obviously played a role in anything Matt Pike's touched. And Archie, and we got Pete into Cult of Luna, which is, they're probably my favorite active band.
Wow.
Who just giant experience and layering of sounds, and they're also the only band in the world that I will say does double drumming right. I usually think double drumming is just dumb.
It can be a little crazy. I played in bands where I've done it, and it's a little ridiculous.
At least in our part of the world. I think if you're talking a drummer and a percussionist, that's awesome.
No, that's
cool.
A
totally different
I'm talking
thing.
double
but
drum
two
sets.
Drum sets, it's. I feel like it's very, very rarely wielded well. Actually, you and I joked about doing this at one point, and I remember just laughing because I was like, God, his sense of time is so right on. He's going to hate me. I was like, you just play straight, and I'll just weave around you. But
right. Well, I would say James Brown and the Allman Brothers did it well.
That's true.
But other than
in the world of like loud music, though, like the
Yeah.
closest besides Cult of Luna, the closest I can come is maybe like Trail of Dead did okay with it. They weren't 100% my bag, but I could watch them and be like, oh, you guys are doing that creatively and musically. But no, when we started Godmaker, though, I was playing in Brewhammer. Nobody knows Brewhammer, but I mean, everybody now knows Nick, our bass player, who is now
Mutoid Man.
Yeah, in Mutoid Man, and
with the one and only Ben Kohler, also who I interviewed on this drumming podcast, by the way.
My God, I'm setting you up. I'm just teeing them all up for you.
Teeing them up, buddy. Thank you. I appreciate it.
But in that band, again, it was started. We were just, the whole goal was to be the most unrepentantly thrashy, meatily, notey, ridiculous thing ever. And so I wanted four toms because when those guys started doing biddly 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 runs, I wanted to be able to note for note them. But yeah, so it was an accident. I was playing in that band, and I got so tired of switching setups between rehearsals that I would just practice with Godmaker on the Brewhammer setup, and all of those drums wrote themselves into the songs on our record. And you and I both are huge Ken Schalk fans.
Yeah, for sure.
He was the drummers that maybe influenced me the most. You know, Lars's drumming, such that it was, made me want to play drums.
Absolutely.
And I learned to play drums on the Black Album.
Right.
You know, I had my chops together enough that I could sit there and just learn that record. And I'll actually still absolutely say that I think those two records are perfectly drummed, but I think that the credit goes more to Randy Staub and 8 miles of tape and Scotch tape and razors.
Yeah, that must have been an absolute. I mean, you know what's funny, dude, is that I got the Metallica and Justice for All. They remastered it, so I got it on vinyl, and I got it, and of course I'm sitting here listening to it, and I'm like, that's cool that they remastered it. It sounds like it's got a different compression for vinyl, but I really wish they would have remixed it and at least put a little more goddamn bass on the record, man. Come on, fuck.
The interviews with those guys were just like, just drum edits alone.
Yeah,
there are boxes of fragments of tape that have probably just flown apart, and I think that even if they had wanted to, and you know, I wish they had a little bit, I will make people mad because I actually kind of think that they made the right call for the sound of that record. I think they made the right call because he was playing the same parts as James, and it was mudding it up. It's already the most scooped record,
right?
Save Earth Crisis ever.
Yeah. You'd have to alter the tone clearly to give it some definition in that, because it's a huge guitar record. It's a guitar record.
Yeah,
you know, but still, I
it's
feel
just
like
rhythm, guitar, and drums. That's all
distinguish the bass. But I feel like I listen to that and I'm like, I don't know that I can necessarily even hear a distinguished bass note or line in there, which is weird. But then, of course, when it came out, I wasn't thinking about any of that shit. I thought it was the most awesome tape. I had the sweet cassette tape. It was awesome, man.
Yeah. But like, you know, so I definitely came up in that world, and you know, Igor Cavalera from Sepultura was huge for me when I was young.
I remember when Arise came out, I think that was 91.
Yeah, and then, you know, around those times I was also discovering hardcore, which became kind of my thing for a long time. And even though to this day, if you ask me who my favorite drummer is, I'll always say Danny Carey, who does not exactly have a small setup.
No, he does not.
But I've joked a lot, even when I was playing in that chaotic hardcore band, probably now. Like, if you dissected my fills, I feel like you would get 70% Danny and 30% Ken.
Right.
And depending on the band, Ken from Candiria,
Right.
might be 60 or 70%. And
right.
Because I dropped my second rack tom after watching him play a few times, and I was like, that's what I want. I want that muscular feel. I want just, to play your kit like a 4-piece.
Right.
Even though I love having a second floor, I still think of it as a 4-piece kit, even when I have all 4 of them set up.
Yeah.
Because I usually do 2 up and 2 down.
Yep.
But it's the middle 2, and then the other 2 are just voices. When you if you need a sub, you can just beat the shit out of both floor toms, and it's big. And if you need a fill that actually goes somewhere,
right,
you've got them.
Still got the melodic option. Dude, we didn't even talk about it. At which point did you move to New York, and why New York in the first place?
The number one factor was I was in love with a girl who moved out here to go to law school, to whom I'm married.
Oh, okay.
The impetus was following her, but I always knew I was going to play music.
Sure.
And I came out a year behind, partially because I was in a band that I really, really loved, called The Old Black, which was very like desert rock. And I was doing that and the chaotic hardcore band, and during that time, I also did a tour playing with the Esoteric, which is like, they get lumped in with metalcore, but I feel like they're so much better than most of that scene. But at that same time, I started playing in this rock band. Our bassist, Liz Weiler, she and Ben, the guitar player, are still in a million bands in Lawrence. Ben is actually, we haven't actually said this publicly, he's flying out here to play second guitar for us for our record release show.
Bizarre full circle there.
Yeah, he played with us on, he's a revoltingly good musician.
Okay.
And he and Pete are my 2 favorite guitar players ever to play with.
That's crazy.
And we pulled in Ben because I knew he could, we used to just call him Jukebox because you can just shout out things and be like, got it, and play it. He was the entirety of the music at my wedding. He's intrinsic in my life.
Yeah.
And I warned them all that they would be pissed at how good it was, and they were.
The new split is officially out. Where can people go to get it?
Godmaker and Somnuri Bandcamp have the digital tracks up. If you want vinyl, there are links on all our social medias.
Okay,
and
I'll include all that in the
but,
description.
But thecompanyKC.com is the place to go for the vinyl.
Awesome.
It's our friend Josh out there it was a total unintentional Hail Mary. I hit him up to ask him about vinyl advice because we'd figured out that Somnuri was in a similar place to us with a couple tracks that we really wanted to release, and that we were going to have to do it on our own. And so I started talking to Josh about, where can I do this at not a million-year delay and affordable enough that 2 idiot DIY bands who are just stubbornly going to do this on their own and release a split 12-inch. And then on a lark, I flipped him the Portishead cover as well, and he freaked out, and I hadn't realized he was a giant Portishead fan.
Oh, nice.
And I think that's probably, honestly, the one thing that made the split actually happen was him freaking out about the Portishead song.
Nice.
And but it just worked. Somnuri are brothers,
Yeah,
Drew's
awesome.
Drew's played in Drew Mack of Somnuri and also Hull and
Yeah.
a bunch of other things. Has also played second guitar for us at one show.
Right. The Brooklyn incestuous family of heavy bands.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice. So it was the most natural thing, and we practiced 20 feet from each other on the same floor of the same building.
Right.
We're both trios right now.
Yeah.
Even though, while we're going to record our next record as a trio, we're definitely adding parts. We're going to get a 4th guy. And
Gotcha. Nice.
It's going to be cool to move on, though, and see the next phase.
The next phase. I hear you. 2 gigs as well coming up. The 15th and the 17th, is it?
Actually, it's the 8th. It's this coming Thursday.
Okay.
I suppose we should plug and mention that Kurt from your band.
Yeah, we'll be dropping in on some vocals and did some vocals on the record, right?
He does guest vocals on Excerpt.
Okay.
And he's going to show up at the Jersey show, but won't be in town for the Brooklyn show. So.
Okay, which is on the 17th. Union
which is Saturday the 17th.
Matinee with Somnuri.
Yep. And
Light Eater.
And Light Eater, which is awesome.
Another bro band.
Yeah. No, my first real band in Brooklyn was with Nate from Light Eater.
Oh, that's wild.
That's right.
Oh,
you tried out for that band.
There's the weird connection.
Oh, I forget about that.
Oh my god!
You poor bastard! You had to learn my.
I mean, yeah.
Allegedly, you tried to learn my stupid drum parts.
Yeah. I went in and practiced with that band, not knowing that you were on the recording.
Oh, we didn't know each other yet.
No, didn't know you. And then later on, I think they did a reunion, and you were like, "Yeah, I'm doing this reunion show," and I was like, "Wait a minute, I tried out for that band." How bizarre!
You were the one dropping slinky, stupid fills over like quicksand riffs.
That's right. Yes.
They encouraged that. They were total enablers.
That's
I joined
awesome.
that band. I said I should just play this straightforward. They said, "No, get weird." I was like, "Are you
All
sure?"
right.
Because
said it.
when I get weird, I get weird.
Yeah.
And I warned them.
That's hilarious. Nice one.
Yeah.
Good call, man. Well, shit, man. John, it was good talking to you, dude. I look forward to catching up with y'all on that matinee. And congrats on the record. It sounds super cool. It's awesome that y'all are doing it with Somnuri, another favorite local band.
Yeah, favorite dudes, favorite bands. So
yeah, man.
It's wonderful.
It's the full package. It's a bunch of packages to stick in your ear holes. There you go. That's my tagline for y'all. All right, John. It was good talking to you, buddy.
Likewise, man. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, dude. Right. Thanks to John, Godmaker, Somnuri, and the general Brooklyn metal, hardcore, stoner, doom community. Awesome to see friends doing cool shit, you know what I'm saying? We'll catch y'all on the next one. Crash, bang, boom!